This tribute is lovingly dedicated to my father who peacefully passed away last May 15, 2022. Daddy was born Manuel Catalan to Bindoy and Tasing in Panitan, Capiz. His nickname was Manolo. His father was a lawyer who had political ambitions. He ran for provincial governor but lost, and therein started his decline. So when Daddy was growing up, they truly had a hard time surviving. But Daddy was ambitious, so he begged his way through medical school. He wrote then President Ramon Magsaysay, a few senators and relatives, and with God's grace, his well-to-do relative Lola Choleng Sebastian answered his letter and agreed to send him to FEU Medical School on loan. He had to pay the school fees after he graduated MD, which he later did. Daddy told us many stories during his medical school. He was so poor that he used his bus tickets over and over again. Buti nakakalusot lagi. His white med school uniform, of which he had only 2 pairs, had become grayish by the time he graduated. And he didn't have money for lunch, so he only ate turon in the CR. Kasi nahihiya siya while his classmates had sumptuous lunches in the eateries around FEU. Despite this, he managed to catch the eye of my mom, Pali Levardo, who was his classmate and who at that time had a boyfriend who later on became a priest. And when we asked Mommy why she liked Dad, she would always say, "Mabait kasi ang daddy mo at gwapo pa." And so they became a couple. After med school, Dad asked permission from Lolo Domeng to bring Mommy with him to Capiz, his hometown, since he had no place and he had no money to start a practice here in Luzon. Of course, Lolo wouldn't hear any of that, so he went from town to town in Cavite looking for a doctorless town. He came upon Carmona, took Daddy there. He set Daddy up there in a rented apartment with a few plates, 50 pesos, some essentials, and Mang Pastor, who became my yayo and his errand boy. In a few months, he had enough funds to buy a second-hand car and pay for a wedding. And so after 1 year, I was born. And then after another year, Bibet was born. After 2 years came Jojo. And after 8 long years came our darling bunso, Debbie. So Daddy and Mommy set up clinic in Carmona, and there they built our home, they made friends, got involved in civic groups. It was in Carmona where we grew up. So they developed friendships there who became their lifelong friends. And these are just some of the pictures. It was there that we grew up. As young and solo doctors in town, they treated all cases. The usual cough and colds, asthma, TB, nanganganak, even simple trauma cases that needed stitching. I remember well because as kids, we used to assist them, stitching those patients with blood oozing from the open wounds. And we also helped prepare the medicines, putting the tablets in small packets. So it was not surprising that we all became doctors because we didn't know anything else. We ate, we slept, we drank, caring for patients. Dad spent most of his time in his Batangas clinic while mommy tended to her family, and also had her own clinic in Carmona. When we were very little, we raced to get the slippers when daddy would come home from clinic because he always had pasalubong for us. And it was usually espasol, which I loved. Early on in their practice, since Carmona was a small town, too small for two doctors, Dad looked for another town where he could start his own practice, and he found Santo Tomas, Batangas. So this is where he did his clinic until late last year. Can you imagine 60 years of practice in another town? And as a young doctor on Saturdays, he also would do free clinic at GMA. He always had a heart for the less fortunate. Recently, even with his illness, as he started fighting cancer since 2020, Daddy persisted in seeing patients up to October of 2021. Now, aside from doctoring, my parents also engaged in other businesses. Dad was ever the entrepreneur. They had a chicken coop right in our backyard, and I remember Mommy used to sew us little dusters using the colorful printed cloth where the chicken feed came packaged in. We, the kids, used to sell the eggs, and people would knock on our door, and we sold eggs and ice. Later, Daddy bought tricycles, then jeeps, then trucks to haul gravel and sand, and as side businesses. Then they converted part of our house to become patients' rooms, initially just 2 rooms for those patients that needed confinement. And later, they acquired the lot next door and built the small hospital. From him, I learned the business of medicine. When I was finishing grade 6 at Santa Catalina, in Binyang, our parents decided to transfer us to Assumption in Makati and my brother to San Beda Benedictine Abbey in Alabang. This was at the time where there was no South Luzon Expressway yet, so we had to be interna. I was grade 7 and Bibet was grade 6. And that started us on being independent at such a young age, as we had to be responsible for our clothes, clean up after ourselves, wake up so as not to be late for school, be prudent with our baon for it to last the whole week. Thank you, Daddy, and also Mommy for sending us to good schools. From there, Bibet and I moved on to UST for college and later medicine. In the summer break between first and second year of medicine, the parents sent me to travel to Europe by myself. At a time where there were no cell phones yet, not even a landline in Carmona. Mabuti hindi ako na-taken. I went with the Filipino tour group and further learned independence, as I had to be on the lookout for my luggage and my stuff, be prudent with my baon so that it would last me the whole month that I was there. That was indeed life-changing for me. It taught me how to be an adult in the real world, gave me confidence that if I survived Europe by myself, I can take on the world. The following year, Bibet was also sent to Europe and later Jojo to America. Again, thank you, Daddy, for that gift of travel, allowing us to see the world and learn. Later on, as we finished medicine and went on to train in each of our specialties, our parents continued to support us even as our little families grew. From apartment rental to gasoline, cars, diapers, yayas, groceries, everything we needed, they provided. We couldn't have finished all of our training if they didn't do that. Thank you, Daddy, for starting us off on our medical careers. Mommy and Daddy are hard workers. They work 24/7. Having inpatients meant that they had no fixed working hours. They were on call the whole time. Year in and year out, they had only 1 week off, and that was Holy Week, when we would spend 1 week in Baguio or Tagaytay with our Catalan cousins. Summers were happy days. We either spent some weeks with Christine and the Lebardo cousins in Lola's house in Cavite, or they came and stayed with us in Carmona. And some other days, Pinky and Inday and the Anglenco brothers slept over. And always our bosom buddies in Carmona, and this includes Nini, Mimi, Josie, were there. Of course, our parents always made sure that we and our friends had merienda of puto or goto, pospas, ginatan, halo-halo, or whatever it was that was available sa naglalako. Thank you, Daddy and Mommy, for providing us with a happy childhood. And these friends that we had in childhood remain to be our bosom friends up to now. Christmas were extra special times. On Christmas Eve, as far back as I can remember, Santa would come to our house with his loud ho 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 and his red sack laden with gifts for us. Santa was Daddy in disguise. I think we were one of the few kids who continued to believe in Santa even at an older age, since we had proof of his existence because he used to come to the house. Later on, when we had kids, we resumed the tradition until Meg and Mickey, the eldest grandchildren, found Daddy's Santa costume in Papalo's closets when they were around 7 years of age. Christmas also meant gift giving to the indigents of Carmona. I remember countless Christmases when we would repack rice, sugar, coffee, canned goods into plastic bags to be given away, usually around Daddy's birthday, which is December 26, to our less fortunate brothers in Carmona. It is a tradition that we carried out up to before the pandemic. And maybe my siblings and I will resume the tradition in honor of the memory of Daddy. Early on, our parents started sponsoring seminarians through philosophy and theology school. I remember Saturdays when these young seminarians would visit. Mommy would prepare merienda and they would sing to us with their guitar and voices in angelic harmony. And I thought to myself, when I grow up, I'm going to do the same. Up to the time that he passed, Daddy has a scholar, a young seminarian named Ray Gabriel, who finished philosophy in Capiz. Actually, he garnered magna cum laude, and he is now bound for theology sometime this month. And I am comforted by the thought that many priests, their former scholars, are now praying for Daddy. Thank you, Daddy and Mommy, for teaching us how to be generous and giving. Later on, as we moved out of the house, Mommy and Daddy started ballroom dancing regularly, twice, 3 times a week, and sometimes they made us participate in their big nights. We danced, and Mark sang a couple of times. I think this regular dancing contributed to their good health and long lifespan. Aside from dancing, Daddy also had a biking group in Carmona, the Night Bikers. But his greatest passion is actually music. He plays the accordion and the piano, even without knowing how to read notes. So he does it all by oído. I have lovely memories of us in the music room with the red carpet, listening to Daddy play the piano and Mom singing. And sometimes we just listen to their vinyl records, and later we sang karaoke with the family. In 2016, our mother had a stroke. In 2020, Daddy was diagnosed to have sarcoma or cancer of the muscles. Little by little, as they grew weaker, we became responsible for both of them. Over the years, my siblings came to visit yearly, sometimes even twice a year, up until the pandemic. I like to think that our care and devotion to our parents reflect our upbringing. Among the siblings, I'm the only one who lives in the Philippines. And I feel blessed and honored to have had the chance of taking care of Daddy up to the last moment. He was not the perfect father. Mommy was actually really more hands-on because Daddy was more in his Batangas clinic. Nonetheless, how I am, how we are, their offsprings are a testament as to how we have been brought up by both Daddy and Mommy. It has been 6 years since Mommy was had a stroke, and about 2 years since Daddy has been sick and became weak, and we couldn't have survived without our angels. The lead angel is actually Janine, my niece. She she had a job, but she resigned from the job when Mommy had the stroke, and later when Daddy's illness was becoming more severe, she again resigned from her job. And I want to take this moment to say thank you to all of them. These are the Carmona angels. There's Marie, Janet, there's Ria, Neneng, Efren, Jen, and the Susana Heights angels, Belen, Neneng, and Vicky, because sometimes they would come over to our house, so our yayas would also cater to them. While it's true that every person determines his own destiny, my siblings would agree with me that we had a good start because of our parents. A large part of what we are today, we owe to them. So this is my family. That's Bibet. This is Jojo. That's Debbie. And the love that we have seen between our parents from the beginning to the last moments is the kind of love that we have in our own families. These are just some of the happy moments that we had in Mom's 85th birthday just in March this year, a few weeks ago. For this burol, I couldn't have survived without the help of Ate Lucy and Marion. Janine and my darling Meg, they took away really more than half of the burden. So on behalf of the siblings, we thank one and all of you for taking the time to be with us during this time of grief. And we want to thank Daddy. Thank you for setting us on our way to good, meaningful lives. May the angels open up the gates of heaven and usher you into the arms of our Father. Thank you, Daddy. We love you.